Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Upgrades. I'm Jeremy Knoll.
I'm John Suarez.
And today we're here to talk about the Bedecked Brokers deck from Streets of New Capenna Commander Precons. This one is headed up by Perry the Pulverizer, this is the deck that you play on.
It is. This was a very sweet deck. Big fan of Perry, who I will now refer to as Perry Perry. Great card. 4 mana, colorless green, white, blue, 3/3 Rhino Soldier. It enters the battlefield with a shield counter, so kind of like a totem armor. Basically, the shield counter says if it would be dealt damage or destroyed, remove the shield counter from it.
Yep.
And then whenever Perry attacks, target creature you control gains trample and +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of different kinds of counters among permanents you control.
Yeah.
So this deck has a bunch of different counters in it.
Yeah, a bunch of weird ones that you don't see very often too, which is kind of neat.
I went real deep looking at how many different counters exist in Magic. There is way more than you think.
There are.
Like, way more than you think.
Like, all those weird ones from the old times. Like
there's a million of them, yeah. Well, charge counters is actually, I think charge counter was the most popular counter other than +1/+1.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But there are some weird ones. -0, -2.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of weird stuff. So.
Yeah. There's some weird stuff.
Yep.
But
and then we have the other commander for this deck, which was Cross, Defense Contractor. Also a 4 mana, 1 colorless green, white, blue, legendary creature cat advisor. It's a 2/4, and at the beginning of your upkeep, put a shield counter on target creature you control, exactly what you want to do.
Yep.
And whenever you put 1 or more counters on a creature you don't control, tap that creature and goad it. I can't escape it. I can't escape
It's
it.
everywhere.
The creature also gains trample until your next turn, but it's literally in every color now.
Yeah.
I just can't.
You also got the editor. So it's Denry Klin, Editor-in-Chief, and this is the 2-color one. It's a 2/2 for 2 white-blue cat advisor. When it enters the battlefield with your choice, of a +1/+1 first strike or vigilance counter on it. And whenever a non-token creature you control enters the battlefield, if Denry has a counter on it, put the same number and kind of counters on that creature.
Yeah.
So that's super sweet.
It is. Same number and same and kind. Wow.
Okay. So if you can give it more, you just
that one's probably that's a good one. It's probably a big friend of Forgotten Ancient.
Yeah, quite true.
Let's move them all over here.
Yeah. So yeah, we're going to talk about some of the new cards that are in the deck. We've already talked a little bit about in this series, just the super awesome flavor of the set.
Yes.
And of these decks especially. There's some really cool ones. So this one's a little bit more of the lawyers. Most of the rest of it is, the different families are like the mobsters, the gangsters, stuff like that. This one is we're going to be making sure that things go how we want them in the courts.
One way or another.
Yeah. So you have things like resourceful defense, which is a 2 and a white enchantment. Whenever a permanent you control leaves the battlefield, if it had counters on it, put those counters on target permanent you control. And you can pay 4 and a white to move any number of counters from target permanent you control to another target permanent you control. So that just kind of like, we're just going to go ahead and move that over there. You go ahead and take that.
Yeah. There's a bunch of those types of cards. You got, the bribe taker, family's favor. You got a bunch of different flavorful lawyer-esque,
contractual safeguard.
Yeah, we're gonna control broker's confluence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's some cool stuff. I know the one that you were a little bit confused the first time you read it
was not a little bit confused, Jeremy. I was very confused.
It was Agent's Toolkit. This is an artifact clue. It's 1 green-blue. When it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter, a flying counter, a death touch counter, and a shield counter on it.
Now, the key is this is extended art, so it doesn't have that italicized word, which is if it would be dealt damage, reminder text. If it would be dealt damage or destroyed, remove a shield counter from it instead.
Yes.
I just didn't understand.
Didn't understand how an artifact that's not a creature could take damage.
Took me a minute.
Yeah. So it also says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may move a counter from Agent's Toolkit onto that creature. That's where the shield counter comes into play. And then 2, you can pay 2, sacrifice Agent's Toolkit to draw a card.
Yeah, it's a clue.
Yeah,
of course.
And it is a clue. So
it's a clue. That's why you got to do it.
There's a couple other really cool ones. Damning Verdict is
big fan of that.
Is 3 white, destroy all creatures with no counters on them.
And we obviously got to see the power of Gavel of Righteousness. That card was very, very powerful.
That card was obnoxious.
2 colorless artifact. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you get a charge counter on it, and it's just you play it. You go to combat, you get a counter. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on it, and as long as it has 4 or more, the equipped creature gets double strike, and you can equip it for 3 or to remove a counter from it.
Yeah.
So
this also has from the Streets of New Capenna set. It has the Charm, the Hideout, and also Exotic Pets, which is an instant for 1 blue and white. Create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens with this creature cannot be blocked. Then for each kind of counter among creatures you control, put a counter of that kind on either of those tokens.
What kind of fish?
Blue fish.
Are you sure?
Orange fish.
It looks very orange to me.
There's 2 fish.
Oh, well, the other one's orange too. There's actually 3.
1/1.
All 3 of them are orange.
So, just looking over quick stats of this deck, there are 30 creatures, which makes sense. 7 instants, 6 sorceries, 12 artifacts, 5 enchantments, 1 planeswalker. The only deck with the planeswalker in it. I think that's in Johnny Unyielding, right? Yep, that is what it is. And 38 lands. As we said, these ones have been moving up a little bit between 37 and 39. And yeah, I think this deck is pretty sweet. Overall.
Yeah, I enjoyed playing it a lot. I think it has a lot of natural cards that just go right into the deck. I actually selected some of the ones that I was hoping were in the deck, but
not quite.
But not quite there. So it's pretty easy to go through. You want a bunch of different counters, right? That's what Perry wants. So going through all of Magic's history and finding the different counters there, you're gonna find the most charge and +1/+1s, but there's plenty of other ones.
Yeah. So let's go over some cards here. I think the first one that I want to go over is actually on our list here, and that is Kadama of the West Tree. Wow, I love Kadama of the East Tree quite a bit. Kadama of the West Tree also big battler in these kinds of decks. So it's a 3/3 for 2 and a green. Has reach, which I think it's also kind of a secret reach on this card because there's a bunch of other text on it. Modified creatures you control have trample, and modified creatures include equipped creatures, auras, and counters. So obviously counters are going to be a big part of this deck. And whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So it ramps you up too.
Yep.
Gives them trample, most likely going to get through, going to get you that extra land.
Yep. So. The card I think is probably most important to the deck that I, of course, was not expecting in the Precon is the ozolith.
Yeah.
This is the epitome of everything counters, right? 1 colorless legendary artifact. When a creature you control leaves the battlefield, if it had any counters on them, put those counters on the ozolith. And then at the beginning of combat in your turn, if the ozolith has counters on it, you remove all of them from the ozolith onto target creature.
Yep.
So
it's really great. It's a little pricey.
It is pricey. Yeah, it is one of the more expensive cards.
Yeah, it is a more expensive card because of the fact that it is a 1 mana artifact. And it's real good in any deck that's going to have counters in it, which a lot of commander decks are going to have counters in it. So.
And it takes them all.
Yeah, and this is the first set that really had those keyword counters. So that's one of the reasons why they had this in there. But it is a great card if you happen to have one or can get one. Great to put in this deck.
Yep.
So moving through, we've got another one, Arcus Acolyte. And this one's a neat one that was from
Modern Horizons 2, right?
Modern Horizons 2, I think. Yeah. Yep. So it's a 2/2 human cleric archer for a green and a white, and it's got reach and lifelink, and it has Outlast for a green or a white hybrid. And Outlast is tapped, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and you can only do it as a sorcery. And it says each other creature you control without a +1/+1 counter on it has Outlast for a green and white hybrid.
Yep. Which
is a real big deal if you can't give those +1/+1 counters to them naturally, essentially. Just makes it so that gives them all the ability to do it on your turn.
Yeah, you're wanting a bunch of different counters, but the counter you're going to have the most is +1/+1.
Yeah.
Like that's just natural. That's
pretty easy.
That's pretty much how it's going to work every time. So I'm going to jump around because we're talking about +1/+1 counters here. And I think this is, I'm confident to say this is the best card that gives +1/+1 counters. Yeah. And that is Cathars Crusade. 3 colors, white, enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on everything you control. Every creature gets 1.
Gets real obnoxious in token decks.
It does.
But
I have felt the wrath of that card too many times.
Yeah. It's a real good card. And it's seen a couple reprints.
It has now.
It's gone down.
Jumpstart.
Yeah, Jumpstart has had one. So it's gone down a little bit in price.
Yes.
It's probably a little bit easier to pick up now. But yeah, it can still see its way up a little bit. So that's a good one. I really love that can also put +1 counters on things, but you don't really care about that too much, is Simic Ascendancy. And that is a green and a blue for an enchantment. You can pay 1 green/blue to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. But whenever 1 or more +1/+1 creatures are put onto creatures you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. Again, a different type of counter.
Yes.
At the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game.
Yeah. I mean, you win the game is written on there, and it's a weird kind of counter. I'm in.
Yep.
That's an easy one for me to go in there.
Yeah, I love Simic Ascendancy. I love being able to, like, you're going to get those +1/+1 counters from other cards, most likely. You don't really care about the ability that much. You can have it as a mana dump if you absolutely need to.
Yep.
But it's just going to be one of those where it's like, well, I make a Hydra that gets, 5 counters on it, so this is just going to get 5. Now we're that much closer to winning the game.
Yep. And speaking of the +1/+1 counter theme, I'm going to jump over to Inspiring Call. I put this card into a lot of decks, but being able to draw cards for the creatures you control with a +1/+1 counter on it, and those creatures are going to get indestructible for a 3-mana instant is very powerful.
Draw a bunch of cards and indestructible is
it's
real good.
The worst part of this card is the fact that you want to be greedy and just draw cards rather than use the ability to get indestructible.
To get defensive, yeah.
Yeah.
You just want to play
You just want to be like, I just want to draw a bunch of cards, but I should get my value out of this.
I should wait just in case I need it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to draw like 6 cards off this right now. So. Yeah, that one's great. So another one that gives a different kind of counter is Contagion Clasp.
Yes.
This one's pretty classic in any sort of counter deck because when it enters the battlefield, it puts a -1/-1 counter on target creature. So you generally give that obviously to one of your opponents, but you can also put it on your creature to give yourself that boost if you need it. And it also has 4 mana tap to proliferate. Proliferate's pretty awesome. You're going to have it probably a decent amount in this deck. I think there's already like a thrumming bird in this deck, right?
Yeah, there's thrumming bird. There's a couple of different proliferate cards, and honestly, like you can. I chose Contagion Class because I like the cheap efficiency of it, but obviously you can go up to the Contagion engine if you really want to get crazy with it.
Yeah, Roll-less Apex Hybrid was the other one I was looking at. Yep. So that's a sweet one.
For sure. One of the other cards I decided to put in this deck, which is a new card from Streets of New Capenna. This card is awesome. The art is gorgeous.
It's so good.
It's just perfect. And that is Elspeth Resplendent. Now, this card is not that expensive right now. It's pre-ordering at a pretty, I think around $10.
Okay.
Which is too cheap, in my opinion.
Yeah.
5 mana, 5 loyalty, 3 colors, white. +1, choose up to 1 target creature. Put a +1/+1 counter and a counter from among flying, first strike, lifelink, or vigilance. So you're going to get 2 different counters off of this. And in -3, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put a permanent with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield with a shield counter. And put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And then the ultimate -7, make 5 3/3 angels with flying. You're probably going to be plussing this more often than not, but even the -3 is going to get you a card and give you a shield counter.
The other shield counter. Yeah. And like you said, the art is sweet. I like the art on this one. I also love the art on the alternate art version.
Alternate art's awesome too.
Alternate art is so good at this one. But yeah, like you said, it's weird to me. It might be a thing based on when people started playing, but when you said this was $10, I was like, okay, that's around the cost where I'm starting to get a little okay, I think I want it for my deck. I'm probably going to pick it up. And it might be just because I started playing during or came back into the game during Lorwyn. And okay, Thoughtseize was the really big one. And that time it was $20. And so anything under that, I'm I'll probably pick it.
Yeah, I'm from a time period where Magic cards didn't get above $20.
Yeah, exactly.
So
that was super expensive. And then obviously Jace the Mind Sculptor came out.
Yeah, exactly.
We were off.
Things
to the
started
races.
getting crazy.
It's off to the races there. Yeah. But enough nostalgia. But yeah, that's a good Planeswalker card for a decent price right now if you can get a hold of it. Speaking of nostalgia, one that I actually really liked when I came back into the game around that time is Basilisk Collar. It's so good. This is a good card. I think this one is not seen as much play as I expect it to in Commander.
I think incorrectly.
Yeah.
I will say.
Yeah, exactly. It's a 1 mana equipment rather, and it has Death Touch and Lifelink equipped for 2 mana.
Yep. Oh, Parry gives the trample.
Yeah, gives
so
trample.
You want the trample Death Touch because that is a combination.
Yeah, and if you give it to a creature that has a bunch of +1/+1 counters on it, or is charged up like Parry can with the hammer, you're just going to trample over and you're going to gain a bunch of extra life.
Yeah. I was considering things like Loxodon Warhammer, but you really want the Death Touch because you want that combination of trample and Death Touch to just be just one here.
There's, I think it's in the Grixis one has the Chaos Spike.
Yeah.
There's another one that's from shards that's super annoying, but that one's if it hits, it takes half their life or whatever it is. So it gets really annoying. But Basilisk Collar, I think, is a fantastic card.
All right, jumping over. They have a card in this deck that I don't play ever, and that is Hoofprints of the Stag.
Yeah.
If that card had cycling, I would cycle it every time. But instead, I'm going to cycle out of the deck and put in Luminarch Ascension.
Yep.
That card is made for Commander. Colorless and a white enchantment at the beginning of each opponent's end step. If you didn't lose life this turn, you can put a quest counter, another different kind of counter, on it. And then you can pay 2 and make a 4/4 angel with flying, but you can only do that if it has 4 or more quest counters on it.
Yeah, so as long as you're kind of stalling the board a little bit, if you can put in some cards, like, again, this isn't like necessarily ones that we're advocating, but, you know, if you've got your what's the white propaganda?
Your ghostly prisons.
Ghostly prisons.
Or your propagandas.
Or your propaganda. Actually, this is blue, yes. Propaganda. Sphere of...
Seer of Safeties.
Is the one I was thinking of, too. Or that was actually the one I was thinking. If you've got those kinds of effects where you're like, you know, back off, don't attack me, and you can save yourself very easily, then, you know, it's a great one.
This card is powerful enough that you're even willing to sacrifice some creatures on the jump blocking. Because once it gets to 4, things pop off real fast.
Because it's not limited to like once a turn. Right?
No.
You can just, however much mana you have, you can just
and no one worries about it. You're going to get that first quest counter every time,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have a counter for parry no matter what.
Yeah, you got that counter for parry. You can proliferate it with some of those other cards. You can get it up pretty quick. So next card is another one that is going to have, as we talked about, charge counters. So that's Ratchet Bomb. And again, it's just another fun card that you don't see very often. Ratchet Bomb is an artifact for 2 mana. And you can tap to put a charge counter on it. You can tap it to sacrifice it and destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on Ratchet Bomb. So if you really need to get rid of like a bunch of annoying things, this is great for like against the tokens. Yeah, just not even putting the charge counter on it. You can just pay 2, immediately tap sacrifice, get rid of all those tokens.
Yep.
If you're playing this against the other decks, if you're playing against the Naya tokens deck, yeah, you're going to be able to just, you know, crack it right away and get rid of all those tokens.
Yeah, if I'm playing this deck, I will play the inferior Powder Keg instead.
Yeah.
Because it gets a fuse counter. And that is a very special kind of counter. You're not getting fuse counters anywhere else.
That is an old school card, too.
It is, yeah. You get a fuse counter on your upkeep, and then you can tap it, sacrifice to destroy artifacts and creatures. So it is an inferior Ratchet Bomb. There's no question about it. But it's still fun. But it's still fun.
You got to put those older cards that you just
still
love
fun. So I think the last card we have is another Ikoria All-Star, and that is Luminous Broodmoth. 2 colors, white, flying 3/4. And whenever a creature you control without flying dies, you return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter. This is kind of wrath protection, but also then becomes another card with a counter that you don't get very often.
Keyword counters on it, yeah. Okay, so that's kind of the cards that we would add into the deck. And let's go over these lands and stuff in this reprint equity here. So we talked about.
So
there's some good stuff in here.
Again, lands are great. They gave you this one has Gavity Township. We finally got the Gavity Township that we wanted back in the AFR. The Coven Precon.
The Coven Precon, yeah.
We finally got it here. That's why they didn't do it. They want to do it twice. That has to be the reason.
It has to be the reason.
It's
not that they watched our episode and said, you know what, we forgot about
that. Karn's Bastion, so you have the proliferating land, which is great.
Yeah, this one doesn't have the thriving lands, but it actually has the
It has Vivids, which have counters.
So
you get,
So that makes
charge
sense.
counters.
You get the charge counters on those Vivid lands. That's a nice little deviation from the other 4 decks that are in this.
It's very well built. They realized, hey, why would we do these when we need the counters for this deck? So let's play these. No, I think it was a very good choice. You got your Battle for Zendikar lands, Canopy Vista, things like that. You have the Fortified Village.
Yeah, Village Jara Mirror Lake, which I don't think a lot of people are using those. Those ones from Kaldheim that can pay 2 colors and sack to do something. I don't think people are using those often enough. They're actually really good. The one that can return a creature to the battlefield is super good. The black-blue one.
And then you've got some good reprints. Oblivion Stone. You don't see that one very often, and that gets that does get a different type of counter. It gets a fate counter.
Fate counter, right?
Fate counter. Yeah. So you get that. You have a Tesserat's Gambit reprint at rare. That surprised me when I saw that. I was interested. I don't know why that's rare. I'm not quite sure. Maybe because the Mystical Archive version was rare.
Fate counter on Oblivion Stone.
Are you questioning my weird knowledge?
Oh my gosh! I couldn't remember. I just wanted to triple check.
It's okay. You get a Planeswalker. You get a Johnny Unyielding in this deck.
You get the loyalty counter.
Aven Mimeomancer, which gives a feather counter.
The feather counters.
Love it. Big fan of that. I think this deck is pretty good. You get Devoted Druid. That was a huge reprint. That card was approaching $10 before this reprint. So
and that one can get obnoxious. I know a lot of people were talking about comboing that with the enchantment that can make it into a vehicle, and that way it can just give the negative.
And there's a new one in this set, which is the equipment. whatever Elspeth's shining sword
also
goes infinite with the
that's in the main
in
set.
The main set.
Yeah, it goes infinite with it.
So you get that. There's and it gives a -0, -1 counter, which is another weird counter for the deck.
Yeah.
Rishkar, Rishkar's expertise.
Yep.
There's some scavenging
Midnight
moves.
Clock.
I love Midnight Clock.
Is
very
great.
happy to see that.
Oh, we talked a little bit about Oracle's Vault, which gives a brick counter, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, they did a very good job on the different types of counters you're going to get in this deck.
I really liked Oracle's Vault, and I'm surprised it isn't seen more often. But I understand it's one of those that's slow.
It is.
Because you have to really charge it up to get those. But if you can
still sweet.
that, it's super sweet card.
Yeah. I think this is a pretty good deck overall. I'm pretty happy. As usual, they knock it out of the park. Every once in a while, we get one of the decks that are kind of like, but I don't think that we hit those in a while now.
Yeah,
it's been quite a bit since
it's been a while since we've really have seen one that has been kind of an okay, not great. No, I like all of these.
I think
they're good right out of the box. They're good if you want to upgrade them a little bit, and the commanders are really great to just build around because they've got some really interesting stuff going on. So, anything else you want to talk about on this deck at all?
I think we're good.
So make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, binge, and ring that bell to get notified of future episodes. For Jonathan Suarez, I'm Jeremy Knoll. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.